going through, and is about, as we've always said, we really, our goal is not just to present knowledge, but our goal is to help you make a fundamental shift in the way you think about health, the way you think about your mind, the way you think about your body, and hopefully spur you to make the right decisions and take the right actions. Not those huge, humongous steps that some people talk about, but those simple day-to-day steps that many of us may know about, but we just don't have the wisdom and knowledge to implement them. And that's what we're going to be doing with this. We're going to be trying to show you how these things work on a step-by-step basis, and that's me right here. I'm just going to quickly give you a quick background of myself and where we've come from. And obviously, I have a very, very varied background. I was in the Army. I was in medical practice. I treated cancer patients. That was really where I wouldn't call it an epiphany, but I would call it a growing realization of the things that I felt needed to be done, and I felt I could play a part in making it happen. I'm also very interested in sports, racquetball especially, and I love to speak. I love to share information with other people. I remember one day I think I was applying for a job, and someone looked through my resume and saw all these varied areas that I've been involved in, and after a long pause, he looked up and says, well, the only thing that this tells me is that you just can't hold a job. I'm like, right, whatever, no brownie points for you, that's for sure. Anyway, during my time as a medical student, I obviously loved working with patients. I mean, I loved helping people, but I realized that my interests were more with how the body worked. I preferred the pre-clinical classes to the clinical classes because it all talked about the body's potential to work, the body's potential to heal itself. But when we got into the clinical aspect of medicine, it was all about disease. It seemed that the focus was way too much on disease, and that shouldn't be surprising. I mean, that's what doctors study, right? We're there to study disease and treat disease, so our focus is on disease. And somehow, that did never really resonated with me as much. And I guess absolutely nothing wrong with it, but I guess everybody just has his or her different paths in life. And so even though I love to help people and I love to work with helping people overcome their disease, I realized, especially working as a doctor, as a cancer doctor specifically, I realized that if we could focus on not just on the disease, but also on the human body's capacity to heal, the human body's capacity to work, and give that body what we know it needs to heal itself, our medications, our treatments, everything would work better. And it just didn't seem like I was finding the answers to that. I looked everywhere for people who could teach me how to do that. I never really found it. I decided to come over to the United States, and that was about 8 years ago, and I began to look for the answers myself. Again, we are not against doctors in any way. Now, one of my heroes, as a matter of fact, my number one hero outside the Bible is Winston Churchill, and as you all know, the fate of the free world hung on him for a very long time before the United States came in, and his focus always was on strength, on resolve, on resisting, on ensuring that people had hope and courage. And so he knew how to spark up that hope. He knew how to make people fight and be strong, even when there was no hope and no reason to do so. And here's a really good quote I liked from what someone noticed about him. Winston Churchill, in negotiating with the Soviets, observed that they respected only strength and resolve in their dealings with other nations. And as you and as we all know, the Soviet nations and the communist bloc was in many ways repressive and oppressive. And it took a stronger power, really, to overcome them. That was the only thing that brought the Berlin Wall down. Some strength from several areas, most especially being the economic front. The economic strength brought that down. But those were things I observed. And also, another hero of mine was Theodore Roosevelt, and he particularly was interesting to me because this was a man who preached the strenuous life, as he called it. But his hero was his father, and of course Abraham Lincoln. And his father was a very religious man, and his father always emphasized that Jesus Christ, and I believe in Jesus Christ, that Jesus Christ was a strong man, and Jesus Christ, we are to follow in Jesus' strength, not just I realize really in most churches and religious circles today, we tend to exalt weakness, and we keep talking about our weakness, and we're like, oh, let God help us, and we're all looking to God to help us in our weakness. But what TR was brought up to do was to focus on strength, on to build himself up, trusting in God, to be strong for himself, to be a man. And as we know, he's one of America's greatest presidents, at least. Rushmore, the Mount Rushmore attests to that. So he was a man of strength, and he preached the strenuous life, and he was strong not just in mentally and physically, but he was strong in, morally as well. And he, many of you who are from New York, he was one of the first people who brought corruption, who faced corruption headlong. And so I began to look for ways to help to teach about this. My first approach was to churches, but unfortunately most of them were not ready to accept what I had to talk about. And so we began to look for avenues, and one of the avenues that came my way was to write a book on this. And this book actually jumped to number 19 on Amazon.com in sales. And so I did this because it was a simple way to get the word out about health being a large word, and I covered as much as possible: the economic, the emotional, the physical, the spiritual, all the things that affect our health. And somebody mentioned, one of the people who reviewed my book, this book by Dr. Ajibade is an example, is an excellent example of such a tool, by Emil Mondoa, who also is a good friend of mine. We'll let you have the slides later on as well. Anyway, it was through that book that I came to know my very, very dear friend, Sherry, and she actually helped me set up the website for to sell the book. Then later on, the more we worked together, the more we saw that we had other things we were interested in. And I remember when I traveled to her home in California to visit her family, and you can't really see, it's a little blurry here, but she has a wonderful family. And I remember visiting her home and her office, and I saw many books that were books that on topics that I was interested in as well, like psychology and communication. I was like, wow, this is like somebody is a bosom friend of, this is somebody that we can relate to. And so we've been friends ever since. And I sometimes joke with people. I say, well, one of the reasons I have Sherry on is because people look at me, I'm a single man from a different country with a strange accent. But they look at Sherry, and she's got a family. She's got a husband who works in the Navy. And she's got wonderful kids. I mean, tell you what, that provides an air of respectability. And since most of our, like 70% of our ladies, 70% of our audience are ladies, that does kind of make
now
them...
the truth comes out.
More trusting as well. But of course, that's not the only that's far from the only reason. I joke about that a lot, but I am very, very grateful. Sherry and I have been through a lot. Anyway, we decided to form a company called Building Strength, and the goal, of course, was to present and provide a resource for people to obtain wisdom and guidance in matters of health, strength, and human effectiveness. This really is something I've been looking for. I mean, if I had this as a medical student, I know my practice and would have been a lot easier and a lot more interesting and fulfilling. So really, like I said, I've said several times in the past, we've made a lot of mistakes, and we are feeling our way as we go along. But so far, it's been a good, interesting experience, and we know that we are making a difference, and we are being a blessing. One of the other people who have been blessings to us, especially right from the very beginning, was Dr. Steve Summey, and he has helped us come in contact with, or brought some really good presenters for us. I mean, he was right there in the trenches helping us out, and using his name to bring people to help be on our webinar. So Steve, if you're out there, thank you very, very much. Also Dr. Marvin, of course, like as many of you know, he actually got Barry Sears on to help speak for us. So what I'm trying to say is, as we've gone along, people have been there for us. They've come to our aid, and they've been a tremendous blessing. And obviously, not one.
If we could make our own Mount Rushmore, and it would
Yeah.
have Dr. Summy, Dr. Marvin, and Bernie.
Bernie, exactly. All these people have been such great support, and without paying them anything, without paying ourselves anything much.